Hey everyone, I want to talk about planets today because planets are very important to my game and I wanted them to look really nice and I needed tons and tons and tons of different unique planets and didn't want to have to draw them all or make them in Photoshop or GIMP or anything like that. So I made them procedurally and I actually made them many years ago and was able to use that work I did years ago to generate planets the other day. So here is some planets. It looks pretty good. And we scroll through this, you'll see there's random land masses, random clouds. The color of the water and the land also change. There's that ice cap that keeps changing position. And I've got 300 of these, and I could have made basically infinite of them. But I want to talk about how I did this because making a game on your own or maybe with one other person is difficult because you kind of need to be a jack of all trades. And if you're like me and not really good at the artwork, but good at the technical stuff, then generating textures procedurally is the way to go, especially for natural organic stuff like planets and trees and all that kind of stuff. So, before I got into game development, I dabbled a lot with computer modeling and animation. And I know it's weird to say I'm bad at artwork when I used to do 3D modeling, but let's just say that's how I found out I was bad at artwork. But I'm going to run the game, and we're just going to take a look at how these planets appear in the game. We'll see there is a star, and this star has a planet. So it's got some shading on it. The texture is fairly low res, but you're going to see it at about this distance anyways, so it's not a big deal. But it looks nice. It kind of stands out. And if we look at another one, it looks like an alien planet. And I didn't have to draw it. I made one procedural texture and it just took care of the rest. So now I'll show you how I made it. I use this obscure tool called Art of Illusion. It's a free 3D modeling, animation, and rendering engine. It is a bit obscure and it's a bit clunky. And not clunky in that it's hard to use. It's clunky in that it's slow. I have been active on the forums. This is an open source SourceForge project. And I've been active on the forums and I've talked to the developers and stuff, which is cool. It's one of the benefits of free open source software. But it's written in Java, which is kind of why it's got some innate problems. But one of the greatest features is the texture editor, the procedural texture editor. So let's go to, oh man, it's been a long time since I've used this. Here's a new procedural 3D texture. And so this creates mathematically accurate textures based on a bunch of functions. So let's grab a pattern here. Let's go a noise pattern. And then we'll grab some color, custom color. Just a nice gradient from black to white. Plug that into there. And you've probably seen this before. And we get this nice cloudy texture. And then of course we can change this color to whatever we want. Let's make that green and then it updates. So I became quite prolific with this tool because, like I said, I'm not good at drawing and other traditional forms of art, and I realized, hey, I can basically use logic to create organic looking materials, which was cool. So I pretty much exclusively made like landscapes and grass and stuff like that. But let's change the colors a bit. Let's make this blue. A bit darker there. You can probably see where this is going. Now let's make this green. And then let's do this again. We'll put blue there. And there's a bunch of ways to do this, but this is just what I've chosen to do now. And I'll do green there. There we go. Now you can kind of get the idea. This is the demonstration of how slow and clunky this application is. It takes forever to resize Windows. But it will do its thing eventually. And so here you kind of have a very basic planet, which actually for some games would work. And so it's infinitely scalable because it's being generated by math, so you're not going to get any pixely artifacts. And you could do other interesting things, like take a turbulence, which is different, it's noise, but based on a different algorithm. So we throw that into, I don't know, roughness? No, not roughness. Roughness has to do with reflections. We'll throw it into bump height. Right, oh, look at that. And then you can add in other modules that will like pair with the noise if you connect them together in clever ways to make the bumpiness only on the green part and not on the blue part. And so I thought, hey, I'm going to make a planet because I like space. And this was probably 5 or 6 years ago. So I eventually submitted it on the forums because they were taking texture submissions. And so you can download this program for free and go into the texture and material library and find planet. So let's load this up. And don't freak out. Yep, here it is. This took hours of just tweaking numbers and adding nodes, testing, experimentation. It's really a computer science mind that comes up with something crazy and stupid like this. But hopefully you can see from the previous simple example that you could technically come up with something this detailed. It has to do with adding noise to other noise and scaling them in different ways and all kinds of things. But this is something I made years ago, and I used it for a bunch of different scenes, and it's infinitely scalable. So I needed some planets for my game, and I thought, hey, I've done this already. And this texture makes mountain ranges, as you can see here. It makes deserts along the equator. It makes ice caps. And it makes the water shiny and the land bumpy. And you can see all these little comments all around the place. And so any of this stuff can be configured and changed. And then I thought, well, since it's a noise pattern at the very core, I could change the pattern, like randomly generate a new noise pattern, and it should create a whole different planet. And I did that by adding time. I'm adding time to this linear scale of noise. So it's like this noise, it's this cross-section of spherical noise that is traveling through some imaginary plane. And what this lets me do is tweak time a little bit, and you'll see that the land starts to shift. And this is us sampling different parts of the random noise pattern. So because time is now creating entirely new land masses, that's essentially infinite planets. And so for my purposes for this game, I also added time to the colors and heights and things like that. So as you would go along, you would kind of go through all the colors of the rainbow. And that's how I came up with all these planets. And it's also why you can see the nice transition in the hues. And the cloud texture is another one that's also in the texture and material library. That is much simpler than this. But procedural texture creation is immensely powerful. If you ignore my hobbyist tinkering with procedural textures years ago. Making all these planets took 10 minutes, which is spectacularly efficient. So you won't be able to create things like this right away, but I surprised myself when I did this, and I think you might too. So there are definitely expensive tools out there like Substance Designer and stuff like that. Unity actually supports that kind of procedural texture, but I had done this already, and so I just used work I had done in the past. And this is free and immensely powerful. So I encourage you all to check it out at artofillusion.org. And yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to show you today. It's just an example of the things you can do, these clever tricks you can do to make it seem like lots of people worked on a game. If someone looks at a game and the artwork and says, wow, how did one person make that? Then you've done something right. And the new planets were basically one of the only planets and ships are the only real art in the game, so I wanted them to all look as good as I could within the realm of possibility. So I hope you enjoyed that. I'll see you next time.